We saw some very poor GDP numbers out of them, out of China yesterday. We're now seeing very large estimates of job growth loss from 5 to 10 million jobs. So the Chinese economy is slowing down substantially here. So we will likely revisit the purchase agreements that were put together in the first China trade agreement to make sure that the Chinese are honoring those agreements. We're going into the holiday season. Orders are placed for that now. So if those orders aren't placed, it could be devastating for the Chinese.
Welcome back. Well, the U.S. has signed the long-awaited minerals deal with Ukraine. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for spending the time and joining me this morning.
Good morning, Maria.
Congratulations on this deal. This is a big deal. Can you walk us through what's most important here?
Well, Maria, it's a big deal. And I have two words for the President Trump's agenda: peace and prosperity. And this moves both America and Ukraine in that direction. The deal was something that President Trump conceived back in February. He dispatched me to Kyiv to present it to President Zelensky. So we've been working on this. This was first presented to the Ukrainians on February 10th. We signed yesterday. As you know, there was a bit of turbulence in between, but I think that this is win-win for both sides, and it's very innovative. The easy thing to do would have been to give the Ukrainians more loans, pile on more debt, tax the American people more, and lose the support of the American people. Here, that the Ukrainians can see a path to economic prosperity once this conflict ends, and the U.S. businesses, U.S. best practices, U.S. capital will be part of that.
Yeah, I mean, we were all wondering if you were going to be able to close this. I understand how important these rare earth minerals are. President Trump spoke with Zelensky at the Vatican in that iconic shot that we're looking at right now. Was that conversation what closed this deal?
We were moving along, but as always, all these deals are the president's deals, and no one creates leverage like he does. No one closes like he does. There was the blow-up at the White House where we were supposed to sign that day, and
right.
President Zelensky created the blow-up. Now, the President Trump and the meeting at the Vatican went a long way towards pushing this over the goal. As President Trump said in the Oval that day to Zelensky, you have no cards. Well, you know what? President Trump has now dealt him a royal flush, because now we can take these cards and go and show the Russian leadership that there is no daylight between the Ukrainian people, the American people, between our goals. So this is very innovative, and President Trump, as always, pushed this across himself.
Yeah, wow, what a deal. So no daylight. Does that mean that the U.S. is going to provide military support, increased military support for the Ukrainians in this war with Russia? That's number one. And number two is, when we were all speculating about this deal, there was some speculation that 50% of the revenues would go into a fund that the U.S. had access to in terms of the value, 50% of the value of those rare earth minerals. Can you give us a sense of what the dynamics are in terms of the financials here?
Sure. So, this is an economic partnership. So we are going to accelerate the Ukraine economy. And as the president says, as I always say, economic security is national security is economic security. So a strong Ukraine post this conflict will help the Ukrainians maintain their national security. In terms of the deal, Maria, this is a total economic partnership. This isn't just rare earths. It's infrastructure, it's energy. So there's the opportunity here for both sides to really win. Again, what this isn't, it isn't one of these rapacious Chinese deals where the more powerful side goes in, says, here, sign away your national patrimony. the American people don't make any money if the Ukrainians don't prosper. So now we are fully aligned in terms of economics. And again, I think this is a strong signal to the Russian leadership, and it gives President Trump the ability to now negotiate with Russia on even a stronger basis, as opposed to the daylight that had been previously created between the U.S. and Ukraine.
Okay, I'm going to come back to this because you just mentioned China, and I want to ask you about China because I understand that with regard to these trade deals that you all are working on, you've been focused on the China end of it, and some of your colleagues are looking at other countries. Secretary, what exactly do you and President Trump want to see from China in terms of getting these tariffs down? The president put in this 145% tariff. China comes back with a retaliation of 125%. What do you want China to do?
Well, I think this is going to be a multi-step process, Maria. I think first there will need to be a de-escalation on these very large tariffs. 145 and 125 are not sustainable on the Chinese side. We saw some very poor GDP numbers out of them. Out of China yesterday. We're now seeing very large estimates of job growth loss from 5 to 10 million jobs. So the Chinese economy is slowing down substantially here. So what we will first want to see is a de-escalation. We will likely revisit the purchase agreements that were put together in the first China trade agreement in January of 2020 to make sure that the Chinese are honoring those agreements. And then we are going to push for fair trade with China. They are the most imbalanced economy in the history of the world, and they need to rebalance. Now, Maria, the big deal that could be done here is President Trump is oriented the U.S. toward a manufacturing economy, taking us back to the strength that's been sapped over the past several decades. Everyone knows that China needs to rebalance towards more consumption. So if we could rebalance together, then that would be the big deal. But in the meantime, we're going to bring down the unfair trade barriers and hold them to the agreements that they previously signed.
Okay, so they have to keep their commitments that they already committed to President Trump in his first term, because they stopped buying the agriculture that they said that they would under Joe Biden. We know that. And you say you want them to buy more from America. You got to up the consumption. What about the non-tariff barriers? What about some of the things that China does, like the surveillance of America, buying land near our military installations, all of the other non-tariff barriers that President Trump has spoken about, bullying our Navy ships?
There's a whole range of the bad behavior by the Chinese. We're going to be focused on trade, but the non-tariff trade barriers for China are especially insidious. China actually has low tariffs that if you look at the stated tariffs, it's just impossible for U.S. companies to do business there. And when they do, there's substantial IP theft, there's cyber hacking. So, everything is on the table for the economic relationship. I am confident that the Chinese will want to reach a deal. And as I said, this is going to be a multi-step process. First, we need to de-escalate, and then over time, we will start focusing on a larger trade deal.
Okay, very, very important information there. And the president said there's a very good chance that the U.S. makes a deal with China. Do you see that happening within a couple of weeks, a couple of months? What's your timing, Mr. Secretary?
Well, again, Maria, as I said, the Chinese need to de-escalate these high tariffs, because there is the equivalent of an embargo, and the Chinese business model is built on selling cheap goods to the U.S. They sell us about 5 times more than we sell them. So, their factories are closing down as we speak. We're going into the holiday season. Orders are placed for that now. So if those orders aren't placed, it could be devastating for the Chinese.
And Commerce Secretary Lutnick yesterday said that you're leading these negotiations and he's dealing with other countries. But there's lots of speculation that we're close on India and other. Is it fair to say that we'll see a deal with India and South Korea before we see something with China?
Well, again, Maria, these are multi-step deals because of the de-escalation. Could we see a de-escalation because the Chinese need to de-escalate sooner than the other deals? Perhaps. But the other deals are moving along well. I am concentrating on our Asian trading partners. So we're meeting with the Japanese delegation today. We've had some very good meetings with Korea. Vice President Vance was in India. I had very good meetings with the Indonesian finance minister. So, we are moving quickly. As I said yesterday, President Trump is doing peace deals, trade deals, and tax deals. And we're also approaching what is the biggest deal we're going to do this year. And it's the tax deal, as President Trump calls it, one big, beautiful deal to make the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent, and then add many of the president's campaign promises onto that, bring back full expensing for equipment for American factories, and we want to add full expensing for the structures for the factories.
And you've done a lot of work on that, meeting with congressional lawmakers on this deal. Do you expect the big, beautiful bill to be on the president's desk for signage by July 4th?
Leader Thune said that yesterday, so I have great confidence in him. Speaker Johnson has gotten his side of the building to move with great speed, and he's expecting that the House portion of the bill will be done on or about Memorial Day. So it's moving very quickly. And again, this is President Trump's leadership. I want to commend Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, and then President Trump's leadership in helping them hold their coalitions together. It's going very well.
Secretary, we've been hearing reports that the European Union is going to present something next week. Have you spoken with your counterparts in the European Union about a trade deal and lowering their tariffs there? What would you like to see from the EU?
Maria, I'm not directly involved with the EU negotiations at present. Last week was IMF World Bank Week in D.C. I met with my counterparts. We had a fulsome discussion about their tariffs, their non-tariff trade barriers, and they were complaining about the tariffs that we put up. And I said, well, if they're so bad, why do you have them? Why do you have a 10% auto tax? Why do you have what's called a digital service tax on our internet companies? They just see a big pot of money and they're going after it. So we're going to bring those down. All I hear about is how special the French farmers are. Well, I'm sure the French farmers are special, but American farmers are special. I'm an American farmer.
Yeah, all great points. And you mentioned the auto situation. We're about to speak with the CEO of General Motors. And one of the issues in the auto sector is the fact that there's so many tariffs. There's tariffs on aluminum and steel, and there's tariffs on auto parts and tariffs on automakers. One reason that President Trump the other day softened the blow there for the automakers. But will you be able to come up with some more clarity in terms of what tariffs are going to look like in the coming 3 to 6 months so that business has that confidence and clarity it needs to make the investments that they're expecting? One Wall Street source the other day said to me, we're talking about a freeze in the capital markets. People don't have clarity, so they're not investing the way they'd like to.
Well, Maria, as a recovering Wall Street person, I can tell you Wall Street people like instant gratification. President Trump's agenda is an agenda for the next 1, 2, 3 decades in the U.S. of bringing back manufacturing. And we have a very, what I call a barbell economy. On one side, we're the envy in the world of financial services, tech. On the other side, we're a great natural resource economy driven by energy. We're going to keep the energy dominance going. And what President Trump is doing is looking to bring back the precision manufacturing jobs that have left over the past decades. And I think we will close the uncertainty aperture more and more every day, every week on these tariffs. But we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to fix this overnight. But I do think uncertainty will go away. But also, Maria, I point out, in game theory, strategic uncertainty is a negotiating tactic, and no one does it better than President Trump. We don't want to. We don't want to put our cards on the table before we start negotiating. But I can tell you, we're on a path. The path is going to be worth it when we get there. And for the short term, that I think everyone should take a deep breath. As your previous guest said, the market did this incredible round trip in April. 2 weeks ago, all I saw were headlines that said the worst week in April since the Great Depression, and we finished flat on the month.
And then we had a huge rally, but you didn't see the same headlines about the rally. Secretary, we were just talking a moment ago about that meeting with business leaders at the White House. You met with many of those leaders in the Oval Office yesterday. Did you get a sense that they are going to, in fact, move supply chains into America, and when?
Maria, we've seen substantial commitments. There's 7 or 8 trillion between industry and sovereign funds, foreign investors wanting to come in, and there's a great sense of optimism. The meeting yesterday was about American innovation. No one innovates like Americans. The American economy is the best place for capital in the world, and what we are doing is putting more certainty in place. We've got the tax bill, which is going to have certainty. We're going to have permanence in the tax bill. We are cutting energy costs, so we will be the low-cost energy provider for business. And then we're providing substantial deregulation for these businesses, which the main thing that we heard was that they were just buckling under all the Biden-era regulations.
Yeah, and of course, that's that three-legged stool that you talk about all the time. But yesterday, we saw a contraction in the economy. The GDP came out down 0.3%. The first read of the first quarter GDP. I know that we'll see updates to that GDP. But, Mr. Secretary, can you walk us through what happened there? And does this indicate or suggest that we could, in fact, see a recession this year?
No, Maria, as NEC Director Hassett said, we expect to see the number revised. It was a first quarter number. A lot of it may have been due to inventory stocking. I think there were some anomalies in the number as we pick it apart. And remember, too, some of this is the economy that we inherited from the Biden era with the unsustainable spending. So the other thing that we're doing is we're reprivatizing the economy. We've had a substantial increase in manufacturing jobs. Household consumption is still very strong. When I spoke to the credit card companies, the banks, they tell me the consumer's in great shape. So that number does not represent what's going on in the economy. It was a good first quarter, despite the weakness we inherited.
Secretary, what about interest rates? You look at the 10-year yield right now, all the way down to 4.1%. You look at the dollar recently. OK, so it's up now to a 2-week high, but it's been plummeting on worries about that. How would you assess those markets?
Sure. So, Maria, let's go through them one by one. There's been a substantial decrease in the 10-year since the beginning of the year, but especially since January 20th. And President Trump and I are targeting that point on the curve. We are seeing that 2-year rates are now below Fed funds rates. So that's a market signal that they think the Fed should be cutting. We've had some great inflation numbers. We had the biggest decrease in energy prices for a single month in years. Energy is down substantially. I am told that in parts of Florida, gasoline is $1.93. And that's an automatic tax cut for the American people. So we're probably going to see a lot more car travel this summer. And, I think things are in good shape. And, as you said, the market, the interest rate market was moving around substantially in April. I think that was a lot of my former Wall Street brethren going through the occasional what's called a VAR shock. They got too much leverage and they have to delever. And Maria, a few weeks ago, when the 10-year was at 390, all I heard was, well, Secretary Bessent got what he wanted. The 10-year's down, but it's down for the wrong reason. Then it spiked up to 450, 455. Oh, we're on the verge of a bond meltdown. And it just turned out that it was some over-leveraged market players. Now we're continuing on the downward path, and I think our policies are going to bring down inflation,
right,
have very strong non-inflationary growth like President Trump had in his first term.
Okay. And real quick before you go, you've talked about this three-legged stool, that's trade, tariffs, and deregulation. Where specifically will the deregulation happen? Is that in the oil sector?
It's across all parts of the economy, Maria. President Trump in his first term gave the directive that for every one new regulation, 3 had to be taken out. Turned out 7 were taken out.
Right.
In this term, for every one new regulation, 10 have to be taken out. We think that there's going to be an immediate savings for American households, about $2,000 per household, and I believe that could be substantially higher. So we're going to see real income growth for households to remedy this affordability crisis we were left with.
Mr. Secretary, we so appreciate you spending the time with us this morning and walking us through all of these very important topics. Thank you, sir.
Good to see you, Maria.